Good afternoon, Palace Birdies. My name is Ella Nedich, and I'm an anchor here at our weekly news show called Live from 205 at PBHS. Today, I am so excited to be co-hosting this episode with Dr. Serrano. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me, Ella.
Yes, of course. So this is our first episode on why measure SOS. So today we're going to be getting into the background and the details of this measure. So do you want to start off by kind of explaining how this got brought up?
Sure. So I came into the district last summer in August. I started, so I've just finished my first year here as superintendent. And one of the things I was so surprised as I went out to visit the schools here is that the schools are highly ranked, but the facilities themselves were like literally falling down. And so just started to notice a lot of the maintenance needs that we had. And we started just having all kinds of facility emergencies that were happening on a weekly basis where, I would say we need to repair this electrical panel or we need to repair this water issue that we're having. And it quickly became apparent to me that we didn't have enough funding to take care of the needs that we were seeing in our schools. Mm-hmm. So we started exploring the feasibility of a bond measure in November last year. So it started in November. The board authorized exploring the feasibility. So they voted to take a look at what a bond measure would be. And we, after November, started a process of looking at our total bonding capacity, what we're eligible for, what was most important to the community. We did 6 community engagement sessions where we went out and took people behind the scenes into our facilities and just tried to help them understand what the needs were and also how school facilities are funded in the state of California, which are through local bonds. And so both of those were surprising to a lot of our community members. One, the condition of our facilities, and then 2, they were surprised about the ways that the way that school repairs are funded in the state of California is through local bonds. And so both of those were, points that we were trying to increase awareness with our community around.
So I think that a lot of community members are probably curious, why does the state not fund facility repairs or replacements?
Yeah, it's a great question, and this is true for the state of California, but it's also true for other states, is that they rely on local bond measures, local taxes to supplement the amount that the state provides. So the state does provide some funding, but they prioritize that funding for sort of the greatest need. In the state of California, many of the schools were built in the 20s and 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s in that era. Yeah. So they all kind of came up around the same time. They're older buildings. Yeah. In newer communities, of course, you do see some new schools, and where they have building going on in the state, you'll see new schools. But the primary mechanism for building new schools is a local bond. So all of the schools in this community were built with local bond dollars once upon a time. So when this community was booming, 60 years ago, and houses were being built, the community was also funding, as part of their property taxes, building the school buildings themselves. Mm-hmm. And the primary mechanism for repairing, replacing, modernizing the schools in the state is through local bond dollars.
Yeah. Okay. So is it true that from the state money that each school is given, that 3% of that goes towards maintenance?
Yes. So 3% of our district budget goes for what we call routine restricted maintenance. And this is the total dollar amount that we spend on all 18 of our schools. In our district last year, it was about $4.5 million. You might say, well, that's a lot of money, $4.5 million. But we operate 18 campuses, so we have 18 school sites with students in them. We have our district facilities, our district office, and then also warehouse and maintenance facilities. And that $4.5 million also pays for all of the workers. So all of our maintenance workers, all of our grounds workers, our campuses are large. So the funding goes also just for the landscaping and all of that. So that's the entire year. our salary and benefits of those employees takes up about half of that budget allocation each year. So what we're left with really for all 18 campuses is just a little over $2 million to do the repair and maintenance of our facilities. It goes quickly. We have a massive list of projects that we're trying to get to every year, and different priorities. Sometimes they're emergency situations, but sometimes they're more preventative things that we want to do just to care for our facilities, and the funding goes quickly. So we're really left without a lot of resources. We spend all of the money from the state and general fund monies every year to care for our facilities.
And so when using that money, can you use it to repair or replace, or is strictly for upkeep and maintenance?
We can use some of it for repairing and replacing. There's a smaller portion of it, so there are different funding sources. And so we do have some line item that we can use for, new building or modernization, but it's a smaller amount.
Yeah. And in order to repair or replace all of the facilities across the district, is it true that that value would be over $1 billion?
This is true. So in 2017, the district did a comprehensive needs assessment, and this is done by an architect, an outside architect. They come in and they do a deep assessment of every single building. They look at all of the conditions of the electrical, the plumbing, the roofing, windows, everything, and they say, what are those most essential projects to bring this building up to current educational standards? And that was done in 2017. The entire facility master plan from 2017 would be $1.2 billion if we were to tackle all of those projects and bring all of our buildings really up to current educational standards. But for this particular bond measure, we really wanted to hear from our community, and we heard from the community that they wanted us to do something smaller. And so our board weighed in on what are those most essential projects that would get our schools up to, health and safety standards, and just looking at bare basics. All of the projects included for this measure are around things like seismic safety, plumbing, heating and cooling, ventilation, air quality, upgrades to classroom spaces. So places that students spend their time, we want to upgrade and modernize those. It includes flooring, the classroom walls and paint, roofing, lighting, some energy efficiencies, windows in those classrooms, and then roofing and hardscaping in all of our campuses. So the hardscaping is just all of the pavement outdoors. And you'll notice if you walk across our campus, a lot of cracks in the pavement and pathways that are broken or uneven. And that creates hazards for students. It creates hazards for community who are on campus. So we really want to care for that and make sure our campuses are safe. It also creates funding for perimeter fencing and security. In some of our campuses, like here at PV High, the campus is wide open, and that's a beautiful thing, but it also creates some concerns around safety because anyone can really walk on campus at any time. And so we do want to look at enhancing some security measures in campuses that are wide open.
Definitely. Across the district, can we kind of talk about what certain campuses are experiencing during this time and why the bond is being heavily advocated for because of the conditions on the campus?
Sure. So we've been back in school 7 weeks now, I think about 7 weeks. And just in that 7 weeks, we have had a major water main break at one of the high schools, our other high school, that was quite disruptive over the weekend. It closed part of the kitchen, created a lot of water flow and intrusion. Luckily, it happened on the weekend and not while students were there, but that was quite disruptive. We have one of our intermediate schools, Miralest Intermediate School, has been operating on a gas generator for 9 months. So since January of this last year, during the heavy rains, the electrical panel at Miralest Intermediate School burned out, and it was a result of the heavy rains, but also electrical failure of the infrastructure. And so that site has been operating on a gas generator the size of a semi-truck since January, and it's noisy, it's smelly, it's costly. It's costing the district $140,000 a month to rent the gas generator and to provide fuel for it. So we are moving that site off of the gas generator. We've been able to secure a replacement electrical panel. So we'll be doing some work on that, which is good news.
Yeah.
It will help, but nonetheless, we're about $1.7 million into expenses on that, again, because of the age of our facilities. And so we had to keep that campus open. We have over 750 students there and nowhere to relocate them. So that was our solution there, was the gas generator.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are a few of the issues.
Is there another school that's also on a generator?
So we did have temporarily, Lunata Bay Elementary was on a gas generator for just a short period of time, but that was really not related to our school campus and the infrastructure. It was something from the power company that caused that.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're not anymore.
Okay. Yeah. And most of the issues that campuses are running into are just because of the age of the facilities, because our schools were built 50, 60 years ago and haven't had too much maintenance recently. There was a bond measure passed in about 20 years ago, but since then we haven't received another.
That's right. So the last bond measure was almost 20 years ago now, and the funds from that bond measure, the district is not receiving any funding from that. All of the projects have been completed long ago, and we are not receiving any funds from that bond measure. So in that time frame, other local districts have passed several bond measures in the time that our community has not passed one. So to give you a comparison, Redondo Beach Unified School District, in that last 20 years, they've had 3 successful bond measures, and they're going out for another one this year. And so in each of those, they've been able to modernize and improve their schools with the support from their taxpayers and our community. We haven't kept up with that pace, and so we have a lot of deferred projects. And the longer we wait, really the worse the projects will get, because nothing lasts forever. And unless you invest in the infrastructure, you're just getting further and further behind. Some of the electrical panels that we have in our schools, the electrician union, they've come out and said they won't even work on the electrical panels because they're so old and outdated. So we're really just hitting a critical point where we need to invest in our schools.
If the district is not able to pass this bond, what does the future look like for PBPUSD?
It's a great question. I get that question a lot, and we'll have to make additional plans. We'll need to look at what are our options. The district does have several surplus properties that we own. We could look at potential of leasing or sale of those surplus properties. We haven't started to look deeply into that at this point, mostly because we are hopeful that our community will support our efforts in this way and keep our schools open, keep them vibrant and here for many generations to come, because this is an investment in the community. It's a community-wide investment when you invest in schools, because the schools serve the entire community. Even if people don't have their children in our schools, we do serve as emergency shelter during emergencies, like for Red Cross. We serve as parks and rec and community spaces for residents who like to walk their dogs on the campus, like to come to our sporting events and access the campus, or even sometimes rent the facilities. We do rent our facilities for community use as well.
And so why is this really important for all members of the community, not just people within the district?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a lot of what we hear of why people choose to live here, a couple of things I hear. One is they chose to come here for the great schools. They wanted to raise their family here and have their children attend these wonderful schools. And so we want to keep the schools great. We want to keep them at the very top of the state. One of my goals is to have our district be #1 in the state. That requires investment from the community. And one of the things that is our magic in these schools are our teachers. We have some of the very best teachers in the entire state of California, and I've seen a lot of teachers. Our teachers are incredible. Teachers have choices about where they can work, and we want to be able to attract and retain the best teachers. And so when we're talking about our school conditions, it's not only the conditions that you as a student and other students are spending their time in, it's also where our teachers are spending their day. So if teachers have the choice to work in a building that's falling apart, doesn't have good air quality, has water coming in when it rains into their classroom, versus a district nearby that has a modernized facility, that has better air quality, that has, a roof that doesn't leak. We are going to eventually, and we have already started to lose some teachers for neighboring districts. Most of our teachers don't live in the community, and so if they live in Redondo Beach, they live in Torrance, and those school facilities are in better shape than ours, that is going to play into their decision whether or not to come and work here and whether to stay and work here. Yeah. So we're looking at it for that reason. The second piece is really around an investment in the community, and you mentioned property values. Yeah. Our Realtors Association out here supports this measure because they also see this as a way to continue to add to property values and to pass it on. At some point, the other reason I hear people move here is for retirement. It's a beautiful community and a lot to do outdoors, and so a lot of people will say they want to move here and retire, and that's a wonderful thing. And eventually, they will need to sell their home or pass it on to their next generation, and they'll want to maintain their property value. So that is also a consideration for people who may not have kids in the schools. And also they may just want to invest in students like you and your education to make sure that you're getting the best education, because you're the future generation and you're going to be caring for them at some point in one way or another, whether it be through providing them news that's coming into their living room, or for our doctors and our lawyers and people who will come back and make this community vibrant for generations to come.
That's right. This truly is a community measure.
Yes.
Yes. Well, we're so happy to have had you on desk today. Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Serrano.
Thank you so much, Ella.
That concludes our first episode on Why SOS. Tune in for the next one. Thank you so much. I'm Ella Nedich.